A lot's changed since week 1 for the Saints, but not so much for the Carolina Panthers. It's a week 9 NFC South pillow fight here on Locked On Panthers and Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers and Locked On Saints podcast. We are a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can get Panthers and Saints coverage every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and even Friday if you want it. Your team every day. That's our motto here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for watching the show here on YouTube and listening wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Today is Crossover Thursday, presented by our friends over at Prize Picks. Download the app and use code LOCKEDONNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. I'm Julian Council, the host of Locked On Panthers. He is Ross Jackson, the host of Locked On Saints, and we have made it to week 9. Panthers, Saints, NFC South rivalry, 1-7, 2-6, colliding at Bank of America Stadium in Uptown Charlotte, and we are absolutely fired up to watch the worst game of the week in the NFL. But we're here to break down every single facet about this game. Ross, how you doing, man? How pumped up are you about Panthers, Saints?
I cannot wait. Bank of America Stadium. It's going to go down. It's going to be the talk of the NFL. And you know what? It's not a pillow fight. It's maybe a little bit of an arm wrestling, like a pinky war. It's a pinky war, man. And that's what we're going to get. We're going to get a big time pinky war this weekend. I cannot wait.
Arm wrestling actually can be pretty physical and brutal if you've actually seen some of those dudes. Like,
that's why I switched to pinky fight.
It's gonna find some Eastern Europeans, put them together, and you're gonna find a pretty intense arm wrestle.
Thumb war.
There it is. 1, 2, 3, 4. I declare a thumb war between the Panthers and Saints on Sunday. So looking at this game, because things obviously have not gone according to plan for at least New Orleans. For Carolina, I thought this team would be better than what they've been. I told people, let's not talk about win total. Let's say they triple their win total. And, of course, that looks like that's not going to happen, getting to 6 wins from a year ago. For New Orleans, they looked awesome week 1. They looked awesome week 2. But then we realized, the Panthers and Cowboys can't defend anybody. In the last couple of weeks, 6 to be exact, have not been great for New Orleans. Looking at this game, heading into the matchup, what is the top story in New Orleans? I'm wondering if it's Derek Carr and his tummy ache and whether he'll play on Sunday.
His tummy ache, his oblique injury, his little tummy hurt. I do think that it is Derek Carr coming back from that oblique injury, which wasn't really like a pain thing. It was more of like a mobility thing, is kind of the way that he talked about it. Tried to fast track his way back, but wasn't able to do that. And so you saw 3 weeks of Spencer Rattler starting. You got a second half of Jake Haener, both of the young backup quarterbacks for the team. But yeah, Derek Carr coming back is the biggest story. Outside of course, trying to not extend what is already one of their longest losing streaks in the last 20 years. 6-game losing streak. Last time that happened was in 2005. So the hope is that getting Derek Carr back is going to be enough for them to be able to win this football game and stop the bleeding, if you will.
Will it be enough to get the brown paper bags off of Saint fans' heads? Are we doing that again? I know we saw it week 2 in Carolina. So are there going to be just a bunch of fans in the stands here in Charlotte all wearing brown paper bags? Are we going back to those days?
I don't think that's going to happen before the Carolina Panthers game. No offense, but if they lose to the Carolina Panthers, then I think that's probably when you see those come out, because you got the Atlanta Falcons at home the very next weekend. Optimal opportunity there to make a statement as a fan. But in Carolina, I think people are expecting a win in this one. We'll see. We'll see, though.
Yeah, well, the line right now, I think, is at 7.5, and I was surprised. It opened at 5.5, it quickly got up to 7, and Bryce Young officially is going to start again. We'll talk about that later on here on the show. I'm curious, though, when it comes to Derek Carr, and it's Saints quarterback situation moving forward. Spencer Rattler, rough. Jake Haener, rough. Like, what are they going to do, you think, just looking at it? Because you got to think long-term, like Dennis Allen, dead man walking for sure. I'm sure the odds have him as the next fired head coach. And Derek Carr, he still got the no trade clause, but does a new head coach really want to have him? And what we saw, Rattler, maybe it's early on in his career. Like, where do you think that situation's headed, just based off what we saw the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, I think it's going to come down to when and if the head coaching change happens. I certainly expect it this offseason because I don't expect a miraculous turnaround from this team throughout the year. They've got 9 games left. In order for them to even be close to that playoff conversation, they've got to win 7 or 8 of them. They've got the Green Bay Packers, they've got the Cleveland Browns, which is a solid defense, and now has the Jameis Winston aura around it, of course. And it's these other teams that they have left on the schedule, like the Washington Commanders. I have a hard time seeing them win 7 or 8 games out of the remaining 9. And so I think that at that point, that's where you probably have this conversation. And it's going to depend upon at quarterback what happens at head coach. You're going to have to sell probably at least one more year of Derek Carr unless he is willing to waive his trade clause in an attempt to help the team get started with its rebuild and its new era. But otherwise, you're trying to at least sell one more year of Derek Carr and then probably the bridge to not necessarily Spencer Rattler, not necessarily Jake Haener, but maybe a third option that gets involved as well that maybe better fits whoever that new head coach's philosophy might be. Because I don't know if those guys would align with what the philosophy of that new head coach or new offensive mind, however it is they go about it, would be. So I would expect the third option in terms of the future post-Carr era, but I would certainly still also not be surprised by another year of Derek Carr to help bridge that gap.
I'll also tell you this, Ross. The Panthers will have a first-round pick if you want one. If you want to get your guy in this great quarterback class that's coming.
I don't know. I don't know. They need to be rushing to the podium for any of these quarterbacks, but
just say if you want it, it's available. At least it should be available. That's the only draft take I have right now at the end of October. I keep getting them every single week, and that is certainly my personal hell. That we can't just enjoy the football. But let's go ahead and talk about something that's going to happen at the end of April. That turns out to be terrible every year for Carolina. Defensively, I know they've been pretty banged up. New Orleans has. What's the biggest story heading into this matchup when it comes to the Saints defense?
Yeah, I think right now it's the continued injuries, right? There's a little bit more attrition going on right now. Tyrann Mathieu wasn't at practice on Wednesday, although that's for an illness, so we do expect that he'll be back. But starting cornerback Marshon Lattimore, 2 games in a row, has left in the second half with a hamstring injury. He was not at practice on Wednesday, so he's one to watch. Undrafted free agent rookie, but also fourth in line corner Rico Payton, which is important because you've got Marshon Lattimore potentially out. You've already lost Paulson Adebo, their other starting corner for the season, with a broken femur, which has only happened like twice otherwise in the NFL. Wild situation. So now you've got your potential top end players out in terms of your top end experienced veteran starters on the outside, potentially out. And then maybe some depth out as well. And so it makes things a little bit challenging. So there's a chance the Saints go into this game starting on their outside, rookie Kool-Aid McKinstry, who they drafted the second round out of Alabama this year, and then Alontae Taylor, who's been their starting slot corner, who inarguably is a better outside corner, more comfortable in that position, although he has gotten better in the slot. And then maybe veteran safety Ugo Amadi in the slot if Marshon Lattimore can't go. So I think that that's kind of what you're looking at here is what's the attrition in the secondary and how that potentially ends up impacting or maybe making the game a little bit different for Bryce Young. But I think you're still going to have 2 good players on the outside. But what do you do if there's more injuries? Because the New Orleans Saints have dealt with a ton of injuries this season, and that doesn't seem to be slowing down anytime soon.
Alontae Taylor had 3 sacks in this matchup week 1. Right. Dave Canales was unable to scheme to pick up that blitz. That's been an issue for Carolina all season long, picking up blitzes. And he admitted after that game that they got out schemed, they got out coached, and we'll see if that's the same case on Sunday against a banged up New Orleans Saints defense and an offense that's going to try to figure things out. Derek Carr is able to make that return. That's the Saints side of things here in this thumb war. Against the Panthers and against the Saints week 9. What's up on the Panthers side of things and who's not here and who's back in the saddle for another week on this Locked On NFL crossover Thursday edition of Locked On Panthers and Locked On Saints. Our friends over at 5 Hour Energy know that being a passionate football fan isn't just a hobby, it's a way of life. It takes a lot of energy to power through all-day tailgates, touchdown celebrations, or an agonizing second overtime, which is why they've created a stand-to-fan 5 Hour Energy shot with a special flavor called Fan Fuel, the energy shot made just for super fans like you, the fans who are first in the parking lot and who are last to leave. We see you. You know what else gave me a bit of NFC South fan fuel this week? This matchup, this game, this rivalry at this time, both seasons going down to the tank. But it's okay. Someone gets to celebrate I think, because ties still exist in the NFL. 5 Hour Energy knows that no matter what team you root for, being a fan requires heart, soul, and a whole lot of energy. Whether you're prepping for the big tailgate or ironing your jersey, people still iron their jersey. Your game day to-do list is always a mile long. That's why the limited edition Stand a Fan 5 Hour Energy shot is here to help keep you fueled throughout the season. What's your fan fuel this week? Whatever it is, do it with 5 Hour Energy, available on 5hourenergy.com, shipped nationwide. All right, back here on this Locked On NFL crossover Thursday edition of Locked On Panthers and Locked On Saints, presented by our friends over at Prize Picks. Looked at the Saints side of things heading into this Week 9 matchup between the 1-7 Panthers and 2-6 Saints. Let's now look at the Panthers side of things in this matchup, Ross. Okay, so let me just get this out of the way. We talk about the biggest story for both teams as far as offense and defense. Defensively, I don't really feel like there's a big story heading to this game. The one positive for Carolina is that DJ Wonnum, who was the first outside linebacker that they signed to replace Brian Burns, was a full participant at practice on Wednesday after coming back last week from the PUP list, physically unable to perform. He had an blood clot that developed in his arm last spring, and that was due to he had quad surgery, had 3 different surgeries, and he had some issue where he got blood clot in his arm. They had to put him on blood thinners, and I'm certainly sensitive to that, as my mom had to deal with that. So I know it takes a long time to come back, especially she's not an NFL player, but it takes a while to come back for something like that. And one of them was at least able to practice for the first time last week for the first time, but be a full participant for the first time this Wednesday. So that's a good positive move, but he still said last week he's weeks away. So that's the only real story as far as big stories defensively. So we can just touch on that, but certainly thank God, because man, that's always a tough situation. I'm happy that he's at least able to play football again, and it gave him new perspective. But really, the story here in Carolina is on the offense, and it's with Bryce Young, and it's with Deontay Johnson. Where do you want to start first? You want to talk about?
We should start with Bryce Young. We should start with the quarterback, because I was really looking forward to a potential Andy Dalton revenge game. But it doesn't seem like that's what we're going to get, at least from the starting perspective. I'm curious how Andy Dalton's doing in terms of being a full participant at practice, and maybe if it makes the line on Bryce Young a little tighter.
Yeah, it's actually interesting you bring up the revenge game. Talked to Jake Lisco of Locked On Bengals earlier this season, and he talked about Andy Dalton always having success against his former teams. Yeah. Lost against the Bengals, lost against the Bears, not playing in this game. So maybe a good thing for Carolina. But Andy Dalton last Tuesday got in a car accident with his family. Another situation like health-wise. Man, they've had some scares here in Carolina. Thank God nothing bad happened to any of them. No one had to go to the hospital. He did sprain his right thumb, did not play last week, did not practice at all last week. He did practice in full on Wednesday, and Dave Canales said that he wanted to err on the side of caution, wanted to give Andy the best possible situation next week to be able to make a decision going forward, and wanted to just wait and see, because he's still only like 8-9 days away from removed from having that injury. And he also want to see Bryce, give him another opportunity. And this feels like, kind of like last week, the last chance for Bryce Young. Canales did not show a lot of confidence in him last week with the game plan, and he's got to open it up this week to really give Bryce an opportunity against a banged up defense. And if Bryce Young is not able to operate effectively, if there's delay of game penalties and procedurally they look off, it feels like moving forward it's going to be Andy Dalton. I think it should be Bryce Young because they're 1-7. Bryce Young is under contract still next year if he's going to be on the team. Andy Dalton's 37. Yesterday or on Tuesday, it was his birthday. Happy birthday, Andy Dalton. He's not your future. Bryce Young probably is not your future either, but there at least is a world where he could be the future. Why not give him more of an opportunity to continue to develop, which is why you were brought here, Dave Canales, than sitting him on the bench.
Yeah, it sounds pretty similar to what you and I discussed over on Locked On NFL on Monday about Anthony Richardson, right? Like, you knew what you signed up for here. This was the idea. This was the plan all along. So hopefully he does get more of an opportunity throughout the rest of the season. But I'll be curious to see how much he's grown between that week 1 matchup against New Orleans and the defense, and this week 9 matchup against New Orleans and the defense that isn't going to do things any differently. Like Dennis Allen doesn't change a lot of what he does. He believes very much in his system. And so curious to see if maybe he shows a little bit of growth from 1 to 9.
Yeah, and going back to Monday when Dave Canales met with the media, he did say that he thought that Bryce Young played fast, and he was very decisive. He had some scrambles, threw the ball away in some situations when it was the right thing to do, and he found a little more extra time in the pocket. In week 1, he was jittery. did not trust the pocket, did
Mm-hmm.
not play fast. He looked like a different quarterback from that standpoint from week 1 and week 2, where we saw the jump pass, red flag against the Chargers.
Right.
He
Yeah.
did not look, and I think I did see one late in that game. I think we still saw a little jump pass, but I tried to ignore it. I think I saw it, but either way, he looked better. And in mop-up duty, he made some completions down the field, and we'll see if they try to do more of that. If the coach has more confidence in that, and of course, the quarterback, Bryce Young, has more confidence. But the other big story offensively this week happened on Tuesday. The Panthers did something that surprises absolutely no one. They traded away Deontay Johnson, their same receiver who they traded for back in the spring from Pittsburgh, hoping that he could be the number one guy and help Bryce Young continue to develop. And that situation only lasted 2 weeks. And this situation with Deontay Johnson only lasted 7 games total. And it feels like the right decision as far as getting rid of him. The problem, though, is they only made a pick swap. They went from having a 6th-round pick to a 5th-round pick. And looking at things right now, Ross, at my favorite website, takeathon.com, the Panthers are only moving up 18 spots as they have the number 1 overall pick. The Ravens had the 23rd overall pick all the way back and look at where it would be in the 5th round. There were 8 compensatory picks at the end of the 5th round, 18 spots. And the way Baltimore rather looks, they're probably going to be a team in the AFC title game again this year, meaning we're looking at a 10, 12, 14 spot change for Carolina if they ended up finishing off number 1 overall. So that's something confusing to people. Let's be honest here, man. If Mike Tomlin's done with you, you're probably the problem, right?
Man, you have to imagine. It's so funny. I said the same thing the other day when I was talking to somebody else, where it's like, man, don't forget that Mike Tomlin is one of the guys that gave up on this dude in terms of, where he's at. And then I know that there was like a whole bunch of other stuff that happened with this too. Dane Jackson and Dante Jackson and the trades and the picks, and then Mike Jackson's left and all this stuff. Like there's that whole thing going on in Carolina too.
Yes.
So
this is what happened.
Yeah.
They were gonna cut Dante Jackson, who had been here for years, as their starting corner. Good player, but it kind of felt like end of the road made sense to move on. He's carved up a role for himself up in Pittsburgh. They were going to get rid of him either via trade or cut, and they decided that they were able to find a deal where they could send him and a 6th-round pick to Pittsburgh for Deontay Johnson and a 7th-round pick, which is great. Okay, you got rid of a player you want to cut, and you got a number 1 receiver. Number 1, not really a number 1, but a guy who can be your number 1 wide receiver in Deontay Johnson. Great business. You use that 7th-round pick on Michael Barrett, a player out of Michigan who could be a special teams ace. He's not going to make the team. So instead, you need to go get somebody to fill in for Dane Jackson, the corner you signed in free agency, who hurt his hamstring, was going to miss the first 4 weeks of the season. Then bring in Mike Jackson. You get to week 3, Mike Jackson was excellent. Deontay Johnson had a career high in receptions and receiving yards, and you directly won the game because of that trade. But as time goes on, Mike Jackson, not all that great. Deontay Johnson, no longer here in Carolina. Michael Barrett, not here in Carolina. Deontay Johnson gone. So what did that trade get you? It got you Mike Jackson as your starting quarterback heading into week 9. So that's why the Panthers are a bad team. They get rid of Deontay Jackson. They are able to get it a 7th-round pick instead of a 6th, and they end up with Mike Jackson as their starting corner and a 1-7 record. So not great.
So where's the scoring potential for Carolina now? Like I don't know if maybe Deontay Johnson was never that in the first place, but where is the scoring potential for that offense now?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm honestly thinking, have they broken any like 50+ yard plays like all season long? They had a nice long run to begin that game. And that wasn't even that long. It was like 30, 40 yards maybe against the Bears of Chuba Hubbard. Like that's kind of where it's at. If Chuba can break one, now they did go down the field a couple times late in that game, and Jalen Coker has shown the ability to go up and get it. Not a lot of speeds. I don't think he's going to be someone who's going to break one like 70 yards and be able to run down the field and beat somebody like that. But Xavier Legette could be that guy. So that's the hope, that they can find a bust, or Bryce can hit someone on the money. He had opportunities last week where if he hits Legette, I don't know if Legette scores because he's kind of going towards the sideline. But if he's able to get his feet, be an athlete, it's over in that situation. So that's kind of where you're looking at. They're going to have to probably be more methodical, but they need to take some shots, at least have the Saints, whoever they play down the road, be more honest if they're going to continue to play Bryce Young at quarterback. But it comes down to just the defense that they're facing, making mistakes more than Carolina really executing at a high level. At least that's what's been, aside from that week 1 or that week 3 matchup with the Raiders.
Sure, yeah. And look, the New Orleans has shown a propensity on the defensive side to give up those 2 or 3 explosive plays that can sometimes be the difference in a game. So that's where the Saints can maybe potentially shoot themselves in the foot, with there still being some talent, right? Some scoring potential, some scoring talent on that Carolina offense. So that would be something
Yeah.
big to watch.
Yeah, Jalen Coker, Xavier Legette, those are the guys now at receiver. Maybe Adam Thielen comes back on Sunday, but that is not necessarily the best situation to have in the NFL. But for Carolina, at 1-7, youth movement, your focus on development at this point in time, even if the head coach doesn't want to admit that's really what they should be focused on moving forward in the final 9 weeks of the season. I'm Julian Council. He's Ross Jackson. It's Locked On Panthers. It's Locked On Saints. It's a Locked On NFL crossover Thursday presented by our friends over at Prize Picks. On the other side, we're looking at the 3 things. Now, these 2 teams probably need to do 30 different things in order to win the game on Sunday, but we'll whittle it down to 3 for each. We'll talk about that here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers and Locked On Saints. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5, get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the action, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your favorite bets. And speaking of bets, looking at this game, the Saints, even though Derek Carr has a tummy ache, and we're not sure whether he's going to play on Sunday, are 7.5-point favorites on the road against the Panthers, who are plus 295 money line, 43.5 over under on Sunday. And my, oh my, how things have turned for the Panthers this season. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more. Of FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Listen up, renters. Ever feel like you're stuck in this loop of rent payments, just watching your money vanish into thin air? It's time to turn that rent game around and start earning some serious rewards. That's where Built Rewards comes in. Built is breaking ground as a neighborhood rewards program that hooks you up with points on your rent. Every month, pay your rent and watch the Built points roll in. Use points to jet off on a dream vacation. Put your points towards a flight or hotel stay with 500 plus airlines and 700,000 plus hotels and properties. You can also use your points to book fitness studio classes, redeem them toward a future rent payment. They're designed to meet your lifestyle. Pay rent hassle-free through the Built Rewards app. Your rent game just got a major upgrade. Built points have been consistently ranked the highest value point currency by the Points Guys and Bankrate. Earn points by paying rent right now when you go to joinbuilt.com/lockedonnfl. That's joinbilt.com/lockedonnfl. Make sure to use our URL so they know we sent you. Joinbuilt.com/lockedonnfl to start earning points of your rent payment today. Welcome back into Locked On Panthers, Locked On Saints. Crossover Thursdays presented by Prize Picks. Download the app and use code LOCKEDONNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Looking at this matchup, we talked about it here just a moment ago there on FanDuel. 7.5-point favorites. The New Orleans Saints are, despite Derek Carr maybe not playing, maybe not having Marshon Lattimore being severely banged up. But the Panthers have, well, been the Panthers so far this season. They have not played a single one-score game this season, Ross. And that is pretty surprising in the NFL, where literally every game is a one-score game for the most part. In Carolina, that has evaded them. They blew out the Raiders in week 3. Every other week, it's been them getting blown out. So we'll see what that looks like on Sunday. And I think that's a big reason why FanDuel, our sports betting partner over here on Locked On, decided that this is a 7.5-point game heading into Sunday's matchup. 3 things that the Saints must do. What are they, Ross?
Yeah, I will say real quick, Derek Carr is going to play. He's going to be the starter. They marched him out in front of us. They had it, he talked to us at media and stuff like that. He's going to be out there. So the way that I look at it, with that being the case, because now I don't have to do the, keep the pressure off the quarterback kind of thing for the young guys. Derek Carr has got to be able to manage that. He's the 10+ year veteran. So for me, it's simple. You don't force turnover. You do force turnovers. You run the ball effectively, and don't sleep on the competition, right? Like, you cannot look at yourself, to start there. You cannot look at yourself as being massively better than the team across from you when you're 2-6 through 8 games, when you're on a 6-game losing streak for the first time since 2005. You have no room to do that. So for me, those are going to be the 3 things. We can dive into them a little bit more here in a sec, but force turnovers, run the ball effectively, don't sleep on the competition. Those are the big ones for me.
Yeah, and Carolina had 2 turnovers on Sunday's game against Denver. There's only been one game so far this season where the Panthers have not turned the ball over, and of course, that was the one game that they won against the
Sure.
Raiders back in week
Yep.
3, and Dave Canales talks all about that. You gotta take care of the football, you gotta be able to convert on 3rd down, not give up explosives. Like, those are some pillars to be able to win games in this league, and they've given up a lot of explosives. They have turned the ball over a ton, and they've been getting killed in turnover battle. Complimentary football, we hear that all the time.
Yeah.
Last week, that first drive was the first time all season long we've really seen it. The defense gets to stop, the little peanut punch by Shy Tuttle. Then the offense goes down 49 yards, gets a touchdown. First time the Panthers have scored a touchdown off a turnover so far this season. Then even after that, defensively, get a 3 and out, get a sack of Bo Nix. Complimentary football. After that, touchdown, touchdown, touchdown for Denver, and it's right back to where we had seen things go in the previous week. So looking at Carolina as far as what they got to do to win this game, the 3 things I was able to whittle down, they got to open up the offense, man. Last week was pathetic after that opening drive. Anybody can script up an opening drive in the NFL who is worth anything. Like, every coach can do it, and they did it last week, and it helped that they had a short field. But after that, there didn't seem to be a willingness to throw the ball down the field. They had a 3rd and 14, and every single route concept was short of the sticks. Like,
oh boy, that sounds familiar.
by a good, like, 7-8 yards, wasn't even trying to convert on that play. Like, what is the point of that? Just punt the ball on 3rd down then, if you don't want to even try to throw the ball down the field. And I get it. I've said this, Canales does not have belief in Bryce Young. If you don't have faith in the quarterback, then of course you're not going to want to throw the ball down the field and have any of those turnovers. But at least try to do something more. And I brought up this example, and I had someone give me some pushback on social media, and I think it's right. I thought we had a good interaction, me and this listener. But dude, Matt LaFleur is excellent at this. We saw Malik Willis. He was terrible. And I talk about building a game plan around Malik Willis' strengths. You looked at him play in Tennessee, you would think he doesn't have any strengths at all, but we did see what those were in those 2 games earlier this season when Green Bay won without Jordan Love. Now, this person said, what strengths does Bryce Young have? Well, he has strengths. Go accentuate whatever those are. You're the coach. You should know what they are more so than we should know, since you see him every single day, unless he doesn't have any at all. Like, cultivate a game plan to help him and to help the team actually go out there and win, aside from being too scared to ever throw the ball down the field. The second thing, you talked about it with takeaways. Panthers got to cut down on mistakes. They had mistakes when it came to turnovers last week, but also they had it's not back-to-back plays, but 2 out of 3 plays there on one drive. They had delay of game penalties. Play call got in a little bit later than it needed to do, but Dave Canales still said Bryce had plenty of time to get that play call out. Procedurally, operationally, things just weren't flowing like they should have been. And I think it's a big reason why the guys have been playing. So of course that's what happened. Bryce Young's got to be better in that asset and that facet rather, and not give up the ball as far as interceptions. And the last thing, it comes around, honestly, back to takeaways. Defense had 2 last week. We have not seen the Panthers defense get a lot of takeaways this season. If they're able to turn over Derek Carr, able to turn over the Saints in general, like, that's a game that they can win. They can play some complimentary football, which you did see briefly in the first couple of series there against Denver on Sunday.
Yeah, and look, there might be room for that, that New Orleans has to be aware of. Like, we don't know really if Derek Carr is coming back a game too early, if he's coming back right on time, if he's coming back a game later than he needed to. So if he has any issue pushing the ball downfield or getting the ball where it needs to go, if Carolina finds a way to be opportunistic about that, or even if Derek Carr has some issues getting the ball where it needs to go and therefore holds on to the ball longer at a later time, if Carolina can be opportunistic around that, then all of a sudden, like, this game can start to go one way opposite where our friends at FanDuel think that it is going to go very quickly. And so you have to be ready to kind of push those things and operate against those things. The Saints have forced a turnover in every game so far this season, except for last week up against the Los Angeles Chargers. Now, they were close. Pete Werner almost coming up with an interception. There was another interception where Alontae Taylor looked to be in position, and that turned into a 60-yard catch and run by Ladd McConkey instead. And so the Saints just have to kind of get back to their defense playing the way that the defense plays, which is typically opportunistic and typically, being able to take the ball away. And then the Saints haven't been able to run the ball effectively or commit to the run when they are getting effectively. They averaged over 5 yards per carry last game, but they weren't able to commit to their run game because of the deficit opening up on the defensive side with those explosive plays. So they've got to be able to run the ball effectively. We saw that well against Carolina week 1. They ran extremely well against Dallas week 2. we're learning why that is the case now. But the Saints have got to be able to figure out their run game and be able to replicate the success that they saw week 1 here in week 9.
Yeah, I'm going to bring this up again. I brought it up a couple times since the Panthers had that just euphoric win on the road in week 3 against Las Vegas. Xavier Woods, their starting safety, was yelling at the media walking into the tunnel at the end of that game, talking about, I saw what you guys said and all that writing, all that, those words, that talk. Yeah, well, since then, man, you guys have given up a ton of points. And this is the team you played week 1 where 9 straight scoring drives, 9 straight. And people here try to explain away to me that, oh, the reason why they gave all that points and all that yardage is because they couldn't move the ball on offense. Well, it turns out the defense is just terrible. And all right, Xavier, guys haven't won a game since then. Defense has been terrible. Show some pride against this team. Like the media is not the boogeyman, man. No one's out there to come get you. Like Aaron Rodgers talking about, the first thing, we need to stop listening to you guys. Oh, so that's why you guys keep losing games. You're listening to the media. Sense. So that's my thing I'm looking at here. Like, are they going to show some pride? Because Dave Canales asked about this on Wednesday. Just, they beat you pretty bad. You guys are going to turn things around. And he said they'll be prepared. So we'll see if they're prepared. They have not been, I feel like, a large portion of this season. And I am questioning. I'm not saying Canales is on the hot seat, but I am questioning whether they have the right guy. Because there are certain situations like the game plan last week on offense and just the fact they keep getting blown out in the NFL. Like, at some point in time, that becomes unacceptable. So we'll see what they can do. It's a big game for Bryce Young. That is the only reason on the Carolina side. Not the only reason. There's young guys like Trevin Wallace on defense at linebacker and Damani Richardson, who had to play last week at safety as well. I don't know if he's going to get the start as Jordan Fuller was a full participant on Wednesday and should be back from that hamstring injury that's cost him the last 5 games, I would think. Leggett, Coker. There's some young guys to look at developmentally. Maybe Jonathan Brooks make his debut, but still, organizational-wise, they got to see whether Bryce Young could be the guy. I'm sure plenty of people are saying he clearly isn't. And I still get plenty of people who tell me they still hold out hope in Bryce Young. I'm going to hold out hope for the sake of the franchise that he figures it out and we can go into next year with Bryce Young being the surefire guy. But I don't know how confident I am in that.
Yeah. I mean, this is where it all kind of comes together for that or not. And it'll be a great opportunity to kind of have that measuring stick. What did he look like week 1? What did he look like week 9 against the same system, same coach, same scheme, all that kind of stuff. So I think that could end up going his way. And then if not, like, that does complicate things for Dave Canales, right? I mean, as you mentioned, you're getting blown out in the NFL. And then if you're not able to, if the quarterback that you were brought in to develop isn't around anymore, then what do we need you for? You know what I mean? So then things get really, really complicated in that situation too. I think similarly for New Orleans, like, this is an opportunity to where they can kind of stop the bleeding where it is, finish that 6-game losing streak and move on and kind of start to try to get some wins together before the bye week. But I'll tell you what, there's no way that this team can say, all right, we're 2-16 that beat a 1-7 team. Everything's good now. You know what I mean? Not going to be able to sell that to this fan base, and rightfully so. Not going to be able to sell that to those players. They got to string together success, which is something that they haven't shown the propensity to do over the course of the past couple of seasons. It's been very roller coaster, Julian. Win a couple games, lose a couple games, win a couple games, lose a couple games. This is the first real streak that's happened, and unfortunately, it's been on the opposite side of where they would want that streak to be.
1, 2, 3, 4. I declare a thumb war. Panthers Saints on Sunday here in Charlotte. Julian Council, Ross Jackson. Thank you to our sponsor over at Prize Picks for presenting this Locked On crossover Thursday here on Locked On Panthers and Locked On Saints. Again, y'all, check out our shows over on YouTube. If you have not subscribed, smash the subscribe button. I'm getting very close to 10K, so Saints fans, go, please.
Yeah, go help them out. Go help them out.
Help me out.
Show some love.
Awesome.
Show some love.
Listen wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, and of course, subscribe there. And check us out again on Friday, where I'll be giving my keys to victory, which you kind of heard here, but expound upon more of that. Maybe even answer some of your questions I didn't get to earlier in the week. And Ross will also be breaking down more of this game.
Game plan, baby.
We cannot wait to see what happens on Sunday, I guess. Well, that's going to wrap it up here on Locked On Panthers and Locked On Saints. We'll talk to y'all on Friday.